Imagine you're married for nearly a decade, living a quiet and routine life. Your marriage, a safe haven, begins to show signs of change when your wife suddenly starts going out more. Always very well dressed and full of secrets. At first, you think it's great for her to have a more active social life, but something in her behavior begins to arouse suspicion. So, driven by a mixture of curiosity and fear, you decide to take drastic measures to discover the truth. What would you find? How far would you go to unravel the secrets of the one you love? Follow this story of trust, betrayal, and the difficult choices we sometimes have to make. The life of Jacob and Alice seemed to be the perfect example of a happy and stable marriage. They lived in a charming suburban house, with a well-kept garden and a car in the garage that reflected their 9 years of union. Everything in their lives seemed meticulously planned and executed in harmony, from the meals they shared to the quiet nights watching movies on the couch. However, this perfection began to show subtle cracks when Alice, who had always preferred the company of home to social bustle, suddenly found a new enthusiasm for nights out with her friends. Jacob initially saw this as a positive development. After all, everyone needs some time to themselves. But as she began going out more frequently, leaving the house echoing with the silence of her absence, a shadow of doubt began to grow in Jacob's heart. He tried to shake off these thoughts, telling himself that he trusted Alice, but he couldn't ignore the discomfort that was beginning to take over his nights. Alice's transformation became more apparent over the weeks. Each time she announced a new outing with friends, Jacob noticed a special care in her preparation. Once satisfied with casual jeans and a simple blouse, Alice now spent hours choosing elegant dresses, meticulously applying makeup, and selecting subtly shimmering but expensive jewelry. The perfume she spritzed was intoxicating, created exclusively to seduce and enchant. Jacob watched these rituals with a mixture of admiration and apprehension, noticing how she checked her reflection in the mirror with a satisfied smile that rarely lit up her face at home. These moments of preparation became a prelude to nights of absence, leaving Jacob alone with his increasingly restless thoughts. The air between them, once full of complicity, now carried a palpable tension, as if each of Alice's outings took with it a piece of the trust he had in her. Jacob's restlessness grew until he could no longer ignore the urge to discover the truth. He contacted a hacker known in the digital underworld for his ability to stealthily breach any device. After a shadowy meeting in a dimly lit cafe, they hatched a plan. Jacob provided Alice a cell phone during one of those nights when she went out, and the hacker installed sophisticated spyware without leaving a trace. When Jacob received the device back, he was armed with a tool that would allow him access to everything: messages, calls, instant messaging apps, and even Alice's real-time GPS location. Although part of him felt guilty for violating his wife's privacy in this way, the need to alleviate or confirm his suspicions was stronger. He began to obsessively monitor her phone, his heart racing with each new message or notification. And he found himself torn between the relief of finding nothing and the anxiety of discovering something that would change everything. The reality Jacob found in Alice's phone records was shocking and painful. In the first few days of monitoring, he noticed only banal conversations and innocent plans. But over time, he began to see messages that didn't fit with the Alice he knew. They were exchanges with various unknown men, full of innuendos and arrangements. Each message revealed a little more of what was happening. Alice was involved with a high-end escort network, attending to wealthy and powerful men who paid generously for her company. The content of the messages ranged from discreet arrangements about meetings at exclusive hotels to conversations about payments and clients' personal preferences. Jacob felt his stomach churn with each new discovery. Every message read was like a blow, shattering the image of the woman he loved and trusted. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was meticulously orchestrated and remunerated, which made it even harder to swallow. With a heavy heart and grim determination, Jacob began compiling evidence of Alice's activities. He created secure files, storing screenshots of the conversations and records of the locations she visited, noting specific dates and times. Each piece of information was a stab, but he knew he needed an irrefutable set of evidence before confronting her. As the puzzle pieces fit together, a clear and devastating picture emerged. Alice wasn't just betraying his trust. She was immersed in a double life, complex and dangerously intertwined with the city's elite. Jacob's sadness was permeated by a feeling of betrayal so deep that it transformed his long-standing love into bitter resentment. He planned a moment of confrontation, mentally rehearsing the words he would say, each one laden with disillusionment and pain. On that rainy night, as Alice got ready in the bedroom, the sound of drops hitting the window seemed to mark the rhythm of Jacob's broken heart. He felt each beat echo through the room, like a clock counting down the seconds, until the inevitable confrontation. When Alice descended the stairs, stunning in a dress that captured the soft light of the hallway, Jacob was already positioned near the door, his body a barrier between her and the freedom she sought in the shadows of the night. With a steady voice, but clearly shaken by emotion, he confronted her with all the evidence he had collected. Alice stopped, surprised and alarmed, her face a mask of confusion and fear. Jacob's words cut through the air, each accusation heavier than the last, as he exposed the betrayal that had corroded the core of their marriage. "How did you find out?" Alice asked in a trembling voice, but still carrying a strange calm that didn't match the gravity of the situation. She leaned against the stair railing, as if needing physical support to face Jacob's revelations. With a sincerity Jacob had never witnessed before, she began to explain her actions. Alice described how the monotony and isolation of marriage had made her seek something that made her feel alive and valued again. She spoke of the encounters, of the nights she spent surrounded by admiration and luxury, confessing that the thrill of being desired by others was an addiction she struggled to control. Their conversation became a catharsis for her, a chance to unburden herself of her repressed feelings, while Jacob absorbed every word, weighing the impact of each confession. Jacob listened intently, his eyes reflecting a whirlwind of emotions. Each confession from Alice seemed to strike another blow to his already fractured heart. The chill of the night air contrasted with the warmth of the tears that began forming in his eyes. He tried to maintain his composure, but the pain was palpable, almost physical. "I loved you more than myself, Alice," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "How could you betray me like this?" The words came out halting as he struggled to understand the chasm that had formed between them. Alice, sensing the depth of the pain she had caused, tried to move closer to touch his arm, seeking some gesture of connection. But Jacob instinctively recoiled, the broken trust too much to allow any solace. After the painful revelation, Jacob decided to delve even deeper to understand the extent of the high-end escort network Alice was involved in. He spent sleepless nights navigating through messages, emails, and following clues that led him to better understand the sophistication of Alice's escort group. He discovered that she was not just a participant, but one of the favorites among a select circle of powerful clients. The findings included meetings in exotic locales and private parties where glamour and decadence intermingled. The information was a labyrinth of lust and power that transcended his worst expectations. With each new detail, Jacob felt a mixture of revulsion and disbelief, realizing that the world Alice had entered was far more complex and intertwined than he could have imagined. Consumed by a moral dilemma, Jacob weighed his options. The pain of betrayal urged him to expose the entire scheme, ruining Alice's hard-earned reputation and potentially leading her to face legal consequences. On the other hand, there was still a glimmer of love that made him hesitate. He questioned whether there was any remnant of their marriage that could be salvaged, or if he should protect Alice from the implications of her choices. The sleepless nights multiplied as Jacob searched his conscience, seeking an answer that could bring peace to his conflicted heart. The decision was agonizing. Should he save what was left of their relationship or cut all ties, accepting that the woman he loved was now but a stranger clothed in the shadows of her lies? The answer Jacob sought came in an unexpected way. As he grappled with himself in a cafe, his phone vibrated with a notification from the spyware. Taking a deep breath, he accessed the new information, discovering that Alice was planning an imminent meetup at a luxurious city hotel. The messages revealed it wasn't just any encounter, but a meeting with a major investor interested in expanding the escort network into an international operation. Alice had been chosen to represent the group, both for her beauty and her ability to handle high-level clientele. The messages were clear and cold, treating the event as a major step for the business. The revelation was a shock to Jacob, who saw the situation with new gravity. Alice's double life was about to become even darker and more entrenched. Determined to see with his own eyes the truth behind the messages, Jacob followed Alice that night. The hotel she headed to was known for its exclusivity and luxury, a place where the elite met away from public eyes. Parking discreetly, Jacob watched as Alice arrived and was received by an imposing man, clearly the investor mentioned in the messages. They entered together, conversing animatedly. Jacob, feeling a mixture of anger and desperation, realized the situation was more serious than he imagined. Not only was Alice deeply enmeshed with this network, but she was also a key player in its expansion. The sight of her entering the hotel with confidence and determination made him feel a sharp pang of betrayal and loss. Night had stretched on when Jacob, anxious and shaken, spotted Alice exiting the hotel. She wasn't alone. She was accompanied by her friends and the investor, all apparently in a celebratory mood. Unable to contain his frustration and disgust, Jacob got out of his car and confronted them directly at the hotel entrance. Alice, surprised and visibly shaken, approached, trying to calm the situation. "Jacob, please, let's talk about this at home," Alice said, trying to hold his arm with a concerned expression. There was no room for calm talks for Jacob. "No, Alice, it's over. I don't want any more excuses, not after all this," Jacob exclaimed, his voice laden with a mixture of anger and desperation. Alice's friends backed away, and the investor merely watched, a slight disdain in his gaze. Alice tried to speak again. "Jacob, Enough, Alice. I've seen enough. I can't do this anymore," Jacob interrupted before turning to walk away. Alice began to cry, her tears illuminated by the faint light of the parking lot lamppost. "Jacob, please," was all she could say before he walked away for good, leaving her there with a shattered heart and the reality of her choices crumbling around her. As Jacob walked away, the sound of Alice's sobs echoed behind him, but he couldn't bring himself to look back. The night, once just cold, now seemed to carry the full weight of his disillusionment. Walking the empty streets, memories of the happy moments they had shared together surfaced like ghosts, tormenting him with what had been and what could never be again. Each step was an effort to distance himself, not just from Alice, but from the life he thought they had. Deep down, he knew that decision, as painful as it was necessary to preserve what was left of his dignity and sanity. The choice to end it all right there, in front of everyone, was a final act of desperation and liberation, an attempt to close a chapter that was only destroying him from the inside. In the days that followed, Jacob immersed himself in introspective silence, trying to rebuild his life piece by piece. The decision to separate from Alice, though freeing, left a void that wasn't easily filled. The nights were the hardest, when the loneliness felt thickest and thoughts of what could have been most persistent too. And you, what would you do in Jacob's place? Comment on what you would do, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to keep following more stories like this. I'll see you in a new story.